Welcome to Architecture 136. This is Digital Tools for Architects, Rhino and Vray, and this is the online version of the class, or the virtual version of the class. So it's a little bit different than our standard setup in a regular semester, but such is life. A little bit about me. My name is Grant Adams. I'm an associate professor at DVC, Diablo Valley College. This is my 13th year of teaching. Ever since I got my master's degree, I've been teaching. And so this is a class that I'm very passionate about. I actually created this class to teach you guys about Rhino and ultimately Vray and getting high quality 3D models and renderings out. So a little bit about me and my contact information. My email is gadams@dvc.edu or grant@digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. Typically, if you send an email address to the gadams@dvc, I'll reply with the grant@digitaltoolsforarchitects.com, but you can send it to either one and it'll still get to me. I have my phone number listed there, so you can call me, or certainly you can text me on that number. Sometimes you just need a quick little get me unstuck help sort of scenario. By all means, use it for that purpose. Of course, if you call me at 3 in the morning, probably won't answer, and I reserve the right not to answer under those kinds of conditions. I do have office hours this semester. They're on Mondays from 7:30 to 9 a.m. and on Wednesdays from 2 to 3:30 p.m. So early on Monday and late on Wednesday. Those are going to be by appointment, so you need to make an appointment with me. I'll do 15-minute windows for you to come, and we'll have a little Zoom conference, and you can talk about whatever it is that you need to talk about or have help with, etc. So a little bit of background on me. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in architecture from UC Berkeley. That is not a Bachelor of Architecture degree. It's an unaccredited Bachelor of Arts in Architecture degree. It's a 4-year degree. For those of you that are interested in transferring, sometimes this is something you're interested in. So I did a 4-year degree. Then I followed it up with a Master of Architecture degree, an MArch, and I graduated in 2007 with that degree. That took me 2 years to complete, so I was on what they call or refer to as a 4+2 plan to get the accredited degree. If you went to Cal Poly, for example, you'd be on a 5-year accredited program, which would be a Bachelor of Architecture degree. That would be your undergraduate degree, and you would couple it together with 1 year of a master's degree, and you'd end up with 6 years total to get your master's degree. So it ends up being the same amount of time. It's just a little bit different route going through it. If it's something you're interested in, by all means, we can talk about it during office hours. I'm happy to give you my opinions on how it all sets up. I am a designer, a property manager, a general contractor. I have a Class B license to be a general contractor. So that's what I do outside of this. Teaching is something that I do for fun, not something that I do to pay the bills. So I have 2 different jobs, which means that I'm only really available on Mondays and Wednesdays for my teaching, though I'll try my best to be accommodating if you need to meet sometime outside of those hours. We have a website for this course. Those of you that took 135 with me, you're already familiar with the website. Those of you that have not, this is the website that we're going to use for the class. It's digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. It is not a Canvas site. It's not something that you're going to use in your other classes, unless, of course, you're taking 135 or have taken 135 with me. You're going to visit this website to view your exercises and assignments. That's where I'll post all of the important write-ups about what you're going to be doing. I'll show you important course information there. I'll post the course calendar so you can see what's coming up and what topics we're going to cover on what weeks, etc. And also the big thing is that you're going to use this to, of course, post your exercises and your assignments when they're due. And that's really the big one. Those are where you're going to be doing your posting. It's how you're going to be turning in your assignments because, of course, this is an online virtual class. You also have the ability to view all kinds of tutorials, helpful hints, videos, walkthroughs. That's all on there as well to try to get you better and more equipped with Rhino and Vray. The last thing that you'll do on the course website is you'll comment on other students' work. There's not as many comments in 136 as there are in 135. That's because in the beginning we're really focused on skill building, and a lot of the lab exercises that we're going to do are going to be focused on learning specific tools, and everybody's going to be building the same thing, and commenting is not productive if everybody has the exact same thing. So I'm not here to waste your time. I'm here to make you a better designer. So interspersed with these introductory images, I'm going to show you some various images coming out of Rhino, modeling, etc. So the course schedule. You can view the course calendar on the website. You can subscribe to it, so it'll show up in your own calendar feed. You can see what the topics are, when they're coming, etc. This is, though, an asynchronous course. And what I mean by an asynchronous course is that you're responsible for watching the lectures and for doing the labs. And there isn't really a set time for you to be doing those things. I'm going to give you some guidelines. I'm going to have open lab hours where you can log in. I'll explain those in just a second. But this is really about you. So you need to keep on top of your workload and stay current and make sure you're devoting the amount of time you need to get the work done as it happens, because it's going to be really easy in this virtual online context to get behind, and I don't want you to do that. So in an ideal world, what you're going to be doing is you're going to work on what you're going to watch first, the lecture and the demonstration that I'm going to give you, and then you'll log in during one of the open lab hours and do your lab work. And while you're doing that lab work, if you have a question, you can virtually raise your hand or ask me for some extra help, and I'll get you through that particular section. So talking about the schedule and what's available, we're going to start with Monday as our example. So we're here under Monday. I'm going to have 2 labs available. Like I said, these are open labs. And what I mean by an open lab is that all of my students, whether you're in Architecture 135 or you're in Architecture 136, which is this class, you're going to be able to log in during either of these lab times to be able to talk to me. So they're 2 2-hour periods. Lab 1, Open Lab 1 is from 9 to 11 a.m. And that first one on Monday priority is going to be given to the students in Architecture 135. So it doesn't mean you in 136 can't log in, but if they have questions, I'm going to give them priority. And then when they don't have questions or they're working, I can answer your questions as well. Lab 2, right here, is from noon to 2 p.m. And in that lab on Monday, I'm going to give you guys in 136 the priority. So if you have questions during that time, you take priority, but people in 135 can also log in and get questions. I'm doing it this way so that if you have a job or you have other work or you're trying to take care of your kids that are at home or what have you, you have a variety of options to try to connect with me. And it's not as strict as it's this hour to this hour and that's it. I want this to be as flexible as possible. You get the contact with me, but you need to put in the time regardless. The other thing is that additional help is available during office hours on Monday from 7:30 to 9 a.m. Those are going to be by appointment in 15-minute windows. So if you need a time, email me and we'll set something up and we'll let you log in and we can talk through something specific during office hours. Those are available for both 135 and 136. So either class can request those times during my office hours. When we move forward into Wednesday, so again, this is on Wednesday now, right? The lab times are the same. So we have 9 to 11 a.m. and we have noon to 2 p.m. The difference is that 135 and 136 have flip-flopped. So on Wednesday, you guys in 136 will get priority in the morning slot, and the students in 135 will get priority in the afternoon slot. But again, that doesn't mean that you can't log in and get help in the opposite time slot. The other thing that's important to point out is I'm not under the expectation that you're there for both labs. You don't need to be there for 4 hours in a given day. So it's about making the time convenient for you to get the help that you need. Again, additional help is available on Wednesdays in the afternoon from 2 to 3:30. Again, by appointment in 15-minute windows. We'll set that up via Zoom for you as well. The course description, essentially what this says is you're going to learn to use Rhino and Vray with three-dimensional representation, graphic presentations, layouts, building skills to represent your designs. We have some student learning outcomes. These are going to be modified a little bit this semester because we don't have access to some of the manufacturing techniques and laser fabrication that we would otherwise have. I will still teach you how to do 3D printing and to do laser cutting, but the actual act of 3D printing and the actual act of laser cutting we won't be able to do because we won't be on campus to do it. We will also render architectural models using Vray, which is very important, and I'll walk you through all of those steps. Course software. So we're using two things primarily. First one is, of course, Rhino. That's the big one. That's where we're going to do all of our 3D modeling and all our advanced surfaces, etc. You can go to the website rhino3d.com to see more information about it. And then we're going to be using Vray. And I actually think we're at version 4 now. They just updated it, so we've got a newer version of it, but it's very, very similar to 3.6 listed here on the slide. That's what we're going to do our representations, our renderings, our materials, and lighting is in Vray. It's fantastic software, although it's a little bit daunting at first because there's just so much to creating high quality renderings. The other thing that's in kind of an exploratory phase, I'm not sure that we'll completely cover it in this course, but it's something that we're kind of looking at wrapping into this course, and you guys are going to be a little bit of a guinea pig for me, is a rendering engine called Lumion, which is available as well. I don't believe it's been installed on lab machines, so it may be something that we have to kind of sort through. So that's still experimental, but I like to put it in here just so you know it's there. And finally, the last part here is the classic Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. Those are post-processing software. If you don't know anything about Photoshop and you don't know anything about Illustrator, don't panic. This class is really not about Photoshop and Illustrator. That's what 135 is for. I will walk you through the parts that you need to know about those software to deal with the post-processing techniques that we'll discuss in this class. So don't panic if you've never touched Illustrator before, for example. I'll be able to walk you through the parts that you need in that particular section. So this semester we're going to be able to access the lab computers in at DVC on campus in the engineering technology building, the machines that we use or would use if this was a non-virtual class, if we were in person. We're going to use a remote desktop system to be able to access these machines, which gives us access to the full Rhino license. It also gives us access to the full Vray license, and it also gives us access to the power of the networked rendering that's available at DVC. So we're going to try to use all of that through this remote desktop setup. I will work through and show you the demo of how to log in a little bit later in this lecture. I'm being told by the IT department that this will be ready to go on Monday. I'll believe it when it's ready to go on 8/24. It might be a couple days after. We'll see. We'll work through that. And of course, if it's not available and you can't do the first exercise, we'll delay the due date of that first exercise a little bit until we can get access to it. What it does is it allows students to access those engineering technology computers directly with all the software and all the licenses that are available. It's accessible via a desktop client, so a piece of software that you can run on your computer, or you can actually use a web browser to access it. I encourage you to use the desktop client because you have better access to your file systems. You can plug in an external hard drive and use it as opposed to having to sync it onto the school computer. Students, you can of course also work on your own computer. So if you have your own computer and you want to use that to do your modeling in Rhino, for example, I don't really recommend it for rendering, but you could use it for rendering. You can do that and set that up. If you end up wanting to do that, there are some potential costs associated with this class. I've eliminated a required textbook, so we don't have that cost. So if you want to invest in the software for the semester or the year, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So first off, Rhinoceros, that's the big one that we're going to be working on right here in this class. Rhino 6, they make a Windows version and they make a Mac version. The Windows version is significantly better than the Mac version. I just have to be honest. I would highly recommend you use the Windows version. If you have a Mac, that's okay. You can choose to run Parallels, you can choose to run Boot Camp and access the Windows version of it. You can try to use the Mac version, though I don't find it as successful. And of course, you can use the virtual machines and get through it that way. There is a 90-day free trial for students. I encourage students, if you think you want to use the 90-day trial to work and not have to, it is, by the way, a full access 90-day trial, so there's nothing limited about it when you're using it. If you back up 90 days from the end of the semester and start using the trial then so that you can make it through the end of the semester, that can be a beneficial strategy, and you can kind of limp along using remote desktop in the meantime. So I wouldn't jump in and get this 90-day trial right now and save it for a little bit later if you want to. And of course, if you actually choose to buy it, it's $195. You have to prove your student status to get it, but it is a permanent license. It does not expire. It's not a yearly subscription, which is very different than a lot of the software models that are out there right now. So be aware that you can drop the $200 and have it to work from then on. There's the link there if you want to explore that as an option going forward. So, Vray, which is a Windows-only application, you can't get it for your Mac. It's a subscription model. It's $95 a year. I haven't had the best success with it running on a on my own personal machine. I think it's better off if you're running it on like the school computers, because you have networked power rendering as opposed to just one laptop's power. But if you want to do it, it's a $95 subscription, and there's the link for it as well. Lumion, which is that piece of software that we're currently experimenting with a little bit, it's free for students with a watermark on it, but I've had some success with students in the past enjoying using it. I don't have a lot of support for that yet because I'm learning it myself right now, but I wanted to throw that out there. And at least it's free, so it's not something you have to invest in. Then we have Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop. Those can be run on Windows or on Mac without a problem. You do, however, need the Creative Cloud subscription, which is $20 a month, with a minimum 1-year subscription term. And if you don't make it to the year and you try to cancel, they will charge you a fee for canceling. So it's just something to be aware of if you're in other classes where you're using Photoshop and Illustrator and or InDesign frequently. Let's say you're in 121 or 220, it may be worth investing in it for this year. Depending on whether you want to work natively on your computer or you want to rely on the remote desktop setup. So computers, speaking of computers, you'll be working on your own computer this semester, which is pretty obvious. I have some basic computer requirements that I would encourage you to heed, because I think it's worth exploring those, or at least telling you about those. I have no problem if you want to work on a PC or a Mac. Both are great. If you plan to run the software natively on your computer, be aware some of the software, like Rhino, is not as good on the Mac version as it is on the Windows version. So you might end up being running Parallels or Boot Camp or something along those lines. I would recommend 20 to 50 gigabytes of free space on your computer. Materials libraries, HDRI, background images in this class take up a lot of space. So if you start to fill up a lot of space, your computer can fill up. So I really think it's important to have a little bit of extra space as you're working with this. The easy solution to that is to buy an external hard drive. If you get an external hard drive, you can plug it in there, and that'll take care of your space requirements, which is a good strategy. I would say 8 gigabytes of RAM is a minimum. 16 would be better. 32 would be even better. The more RAM, the better your computer is going to go, the faster it's going to work. So I encourage you to at least have 8. 16 would be better. It depends, of course, if you're running things natively. If you're running things natively, I would definitely encourage 16 gigs of RAM or more. But if you're doing the remote desktop, you can probably get by with 8. The other thing that's pretty obvious at this point is that you're going to need a strong, stable internet connection. And that's really kind of critical for what we're doing here. Most of the at-home, if you have it from Comcast or AT&T or Wave or any of the at-home internet providers, you're going to be just fine. That's going to be a strong enough internet connection. If you're trying to tether to your phone or use a hotspot, you're probably not going to have enough internet bandwidth to really, certainly to connect via Zoom and to do the remote desktop all at the same time, or there's going to be lagging issues or what have you. So I would encourage a strong internet connection, because I think that'll benefit you quite a lot. Continuing on with computers, a couple important things to note about the remote desktop and the virtual machine. You don't get to store anything. It's much like being in the lab. You can't store things on the computer. Actually, when you log in, you don't know what computer you're going to get. So even if you stored it, you might not be able to get it back when you logged in again. So it's important to make sure that you're storing all your work on your computer or on a flash drive, and then accessing that via the network, or syncing it via Microsoft OneDrive or something like that to get it over to the computer. Please be careful to safeguard your files. Those of you that took 135 with me know that this is something that's kind of a stickler thing for me. I really want you to take care of your files. Don't lose them, don't corrupt them, don't delete them, don't put them through the washing machine, etc. Make sure you keep track of them, because it's not my problem to keep track of them. So I don't want you to lose them at the very end of the semester and come to me crying or what have you. So make sure you keep track of your own files. That's really important. I have some Zoom guidelines as well, since Zoom is the software we're going to be using to conduct the open labs. And of course, I'll send you the links and the passwords in a separate email. I'm not having them in this presentation here. We'll have our open labs and our office hours on the Zoom platform. Students should download the Zoom client. It's available from the Zoom website. If you go to zoom.us, you can download it from there. And while you're encouraged strongly to turn on your cameras, it helps kind of create a good community during the Zoom lab sessions. If you don't really want to show yourself, maybe you just woke up and you're not quite ready to go. If you don't want to show yourself on camera, I understand. It's not a requirement to have your camera on. It's just nice to be able to have that kind of a conversation. The other thing that I'll say is please mute your microphones when you're not actively speaking, or certainly when you first log into Zoom, just go ahead and turn them on mute. The last thing anybody wants to hear is your dog barking or your kids crying or whatever else. So keep that kind of, common courtesy for people. So keep that muted. And then when you need my help, that's of course when you unmute. I will do the same. I will be muted unless you guys need help, because you don't need to hear me or my kids or my dogs either. So keep that muted as we go forward. If you need help, please send me a chat message request saying, hey, I need help, and I'll add you to my queue. If I'm already helping somebody else, that's a really important time. Don't log in and interrupt. Wait until that's done, or better yet, send a chat message saying, hey, I need help when you're done, and I'll add you to the queue so that I can get to you next. Students also, this is a legal requirement, please change your Zoom ID to include just your first name. Don't include your last name on there. That's important because I may or may not record the Zoom sessions for future help for other students. And if I'm going to record those, it's a legal requirement that I don't have your full name on there. So make sure you change your Zoom ID. And all the rest of your professors are going to ask you to do the same thing. So make sure you do that as well. So those are the Zoom guidelines. Like I said, I'm not requiring a textbook this semester. Part of that is because I don't want to add to the cost and the already craziness of this semester, but also Vray's updated past where this book is, and I don't want you guys confused with the older version of Vray that's in the book. The all-important grading question. So this is, how's my grade made up in this class? So first off, there is no midterm exam, and there is no final exam for this class, which is awesome. Everybody likes that. Your grade is going to be based on your lab exercises, which are worth 20%, your assignments, which are worth 40%, so they're a bigger chunk, your final project, which is worth 30% of your overall grade, and your participation in the course, which is worth 10%. I'll go over each of these in a little bit more detail as we go forward in this lecture. I try to set this course up so that you have a very consistent workload. So every week, if you're doing the work and you're attending the lab sessions and you're working on those lab sessions, you're going to stay on top of it, and you shouldn't have too much extra outside of class homework. You should be able to use this as a companion class to, say, a studio class, a 220, a 221, a 121, and it should work really nicely for you. So that's the idea, that's the goal for this particular semester in this course. Each of these, I'm going to go over exercises and assignments in a little bit more detail, and so we're going to start with the lab exercises. Like I said on the last slide, the lab exercises are worth 20% of your overall grade. They're designed to be completed during the lab portion of the class. And so this is a little bit different because we don't have set lab hours necessarily. You can choose whether you want to come to the Open Lab 1 or the Open Lab 2 on any given day, but they're designed to be completed in 2 hours and 5 minutes. So that's 125 minutes. That's what you're supposed to have for your lab period in this class. And so everything that I'm asking you to do should take about that long. If it's taking you a lot longer, you're either missing something or you should turn in what you have and what you've completed. They're supposed to be completed. I don't want you spending a bunch of time on homework. I want you to learn the skills, because that's really what lab exercises are about. They're about skill building and learning the skills and then being able to adapt those particular skills. Exercises in this online virtual version of 136 are going to be due at the end of the week that they're assigned. Again, I'm trying to build in a lot of flexibility based on your schedules and what's going on. So they're going to be due at the end of the week. So for example, this week, your exercise 201 and exercise 202 are going to be due on Sunday at midnight. So that's 8:30, August 30th at midnight are when those two are going to be due. I would encourage you to just do the work on Mondays and Wednesdays. That it will help you stay organized and will help you stay on top of things and not get behind in the class. And go ahead and turn it in. When you're done with it in the Open Lab on Monday, turn it in. When you're done with it in the Open Lab on Wednesday, go ahead and turn it in. That'll really help you stay on top of things. Exercises have a no-pass pass grading system. So this is a really important one. I like to emphasize this because I want you to experiment and learn. It's really about skill building. And so if something doesn't turn out quite right, that's okay. Go ahead and work on it, try it, and if it kind of fails, no big deal. This is about skill building. So if you do it, you get 100%. If you don't do it, you get 0. So it's really simple and straightforward. I want you to get 100%. I want you to do the work, and I want you to learn those skills. So the next thing we'll talk about is assignments. Assignments are larger and they typically require more work outside of that 125-minute lab. There will be time where you can work on that during the lab period. Certainly if you're efficient, you can work on it. Sometimes I build it in as well. Sometimes we actually work on the assignments during the lab because it's easier to work on an actual building than to give you samples. So sometimes we'll actually work on the assignments in lab, but typically they require some work outside of class. That's not a surprise. They're graded based on the skills that you're using and your overall design. So you don't have to just use the skills that I teach you. You can adapt it, you can change it, and you can design something new. And that's really important. So I'm trying to get you to really expand your abilities and use your creativity, and that's what the assignments are going to be graded like. So the other thing about the assignments is if you do an assignment and you don't like the end grade, let's say you do the first assignment, it's going to be a table and a chair. And let's say you do that and you're really unhappy with the modeling or it didn't turn out particularly well and you got a C and you really wanted to get an A on that assignment. For each one of these assignments, you can do a regrade. And the regrade means that you'll go back and you'll redo the assignment and you'll turn it in again and I'll pretend like I never saw the first one and I'll give you a brand new fresh grade. That being said, your grade can go up, which it typically does, or the grade could go down if you do a worse job on it. So I think that's fair. The other thing is that I will wait until the end of the semester to do the regrade. And that ensures that you don't do it more than once. So I'll go through at the end of the semester, I'll check for any regrades, and I'll put that new grade in for you as you go forward. Course participation. After many of the exercises, I told you it wouldn't be as many as my 135 course, and after every assignment, you're going to be required to give constructive feedback to your fellow students. It'll be 3 of your students for each exercise and each assignment. Now, I told you this wouldn't start until later on in the semester. It starts about halfway through, and you'll end up with about 50 comments total at the end of the semester. And so what you're going to do is you're going to give them constructive, helpful comments, not, wow, that's really cool, or, hey, nice job. Give them something that means something. Hey, I think your stairs are really elegant, but what about if you change the profile to be a little bit thinner? Because I think that the stair treads feel a little clunky. Or something like that. The idea here is to give them something constructive to work on. It's really a twofold process, though, because it helps them by getting the comment, but it also helps you as a designer learn to articulate your thoughts in a way that you can actually explain what's good about something or what's not working so well about something else. So it's a good way of kind of exploring the dialogue of architecture and exploring the dialogue of design. And so I want you to practice that through the course comments section. So when it gets time to do the comments a little bit later on in the semester, I'll remind you to get you started with those comments again. This is part of your 10% participation grade for the course. Oh, this slide should have been not called attendance anymore. This is an asynchronous online course. So attendance during the labs is not actually required. Kind of interesting to think of it that way. It is, however, really strongly encouraged and highly recommended. Now, I told you that we're going to have 2 different open lab periods on Monday and Wednesday. You don't have to come to both. Just pick one and come in. I'm just giving priority to one class or the other, trying to give a diversity of time where you can actually log in on Monday and on Wednesday. So it's really recommended that you be there, even though this is an asynchronous course and you're responsible for your own work. Make sure you devote the 6 hours and 10 minutes to this class that are required each week. So if you actually do the math and you take the 125-minute lab twice, and you take about a 1-hour lecture twice, you get to that 6 hours and 10 minutes of actual class time. So you need to make sure you sit down and have good devoted time to do this class. It is going to take that time to learn how to model and how to be effective in Vray, and certainly in Rhino. So it's really important. If you haven't completed 3 assignments in the course, chances are you're going to fail the course or you're going to be dropped from the class. This is a college class. I encourage you to take responsibility for yourself. If you're not doing well or you're getting behind and you don't feel like you can catch up, make sure you withdraw yourself from the course. I will do my best to give you warnings and to give you grade sheets so that you know where you are and where you stand in the course, but you're really responsible for your own destiny, and I want you to make sure you take that responsibility and withdraw yourself. So don't rely on anybody else, me, to withdraw you if you're not doing well. Know how you're doing. Additional course guidelines. So if you miss 2 weeks of class or more, if you're not logging in, you're not doing assignments. I know this is a little bit interesting because it's really about being in person. But if you're not in person, how do I count whether you're missing class? It's really whether you're staying on top of things. And you're logging into to one of the 2 lab sessions. I'm not really taking roll, but I am kind of keeping a mental track of where you are and are you here and are you participating. And if you're not turning stuff in, if you're not turning in your exercises, something's going wrong and you're going to get behind, and I don't want you to do that. So make sure you're doing that along the way. Assignment due dates are going to be announced in class and they'll appear on the course calendar. The thing is that they're not necessarily on Sundays like the exercises. So the exercises are due on Sunday at midnight. The assignments might be due on a different day. They might be due on a Monday at midnight, or they might be due on a Wednesday at midnight. So make sure you check that course calendar and post the work in a timely manner. If you don't, they'll be subject to the late work penalty, which I'll discuss in a little bit. Exercises, like I said, are due at Sunday at midnight, both of them for the week. So this week you'll have 201 and 202. Those are due at Sunday at midnight. You can, of course, turn it in early if you want. All work in this class is done using a Creative Commons license. It's a share-alike license, so we're all working on this stuff together and nobody owns copyright to anything that you're creating in this particular class. Additional guidelines to keep in mind. Of course, I'm here during those Zoom lab sessions for one-on-one and small group discussions. My office hours are here. But if you get sidetracked and you get lost or you're trying to figure out how to do something, Rhino has a great help feature built into it. You can watch their tutorials, consult the handbook, consult the website, look at previous lectures, go back and rewatch my YouTube videos. Get yourself unstuck while you're waiting. Don't just goof off and check Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever it is that you're into right now. So think through that. Make sure you're using your time wisely. See if you can't get yourself unstuck while you're waiting for me to come and help you during one of those Zoom sessions. I strongly suggest that you take notes while I'm doing these lectures. Now the nice thing is you're watching recorded lectures, so you can pause it and go back and rewatch something if something didn't make that much sense. And so I encourage you to do that, and you can often follow along step by step as I'm doing it by just pausing and then continuing on play when you're ready for the next. All of my lectures and my lab demonstrations will be posted on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/digitaltoolsforarch. That's where all those lectures and videos are going to go. Your class 136 is all the content that starts with the 200s. So your lab exercises are 201, 202, etc. Your assignments 201, 202. The lectures 201, 202. You get the idea. So you want to be looking for the 200s. The Archi 135 is all the 100s. This is, of course, an online virtual course. You need to view the lectures prior to the lab portion of the class. That's to be effective during the lab portion, to be able to ask the right questions and to get help when you need it. Best thing to do would be to watch it beforehand. So if you plan on logging in to the 9 to 11, hey, take the first hour, start at 8, watch the lecture, and then log into the lab and be able to finish your work as it goes. The lectures typically are going to take 45 to 90 minutes. If it's a day where I lecture for 90 minutes, the lab has been adjusted so it takes a little bit less time out of your 125 minutes. So it's always designed to be completed in 3 hours and 5 minutes when you add the lecture and the lab together. Late work policy. I do have a very strict late work policy in this course. Late assignments and exercises are graded down by 1 full letter grade, or 10% if you're into percentages, for each 4 calendar days that it is late. That includes weekends and holidays. So it doesn't matter. It's a calendar day. So if your assignment is, let's say we had an assignment due today. If you didn't turn it in, you have 4 more days to turn it in by midnight. If you don't turn it in those 4 days, it's going to be marked down another 10%. So let's say it was due today, you didn't turn it in, and you turned it in tomorrow. It would drop by 10%. If you had an A, it would become a B. If you had a B, it would become a C. If you didn't turn it in for 4 days, it would go from an A to a C. And so that's the kind of thing you want to avoid. And I make this really strict because in reality, you really want to concentrate on keeping your work not late. Because let's say you were in a design review and you had a planning commission meeting coming and you needed to turn in your work by a certain deadline. That's a hard deadline, and they're not going to allow you to just turn it in an hour late. Let's say it's a 4 o'clock deadline for that design review. If you don't make that deadline, you're not going to be on the agenda for that meeting, and you're going to be behind by, say, a month in your project. So it's not something that you want to do. So I'm very strict about the late work policy. So 10% for every 4 calendar days that it's late. If, however, you've gone for 16 calendar days and you still haven't turned it in, obviously that's not a good thing, but if you turn it in at any point throughout the semester, I'll still give you 50% as a maximum. So that's a whole lot better than getting a 0. If you don't turn it in, you get a 0. So we don't want that either. So let me tell you a secret right now. And so this is the hush-hush secret. I want you to think about whether it's better to have late work or it's better to turn something in on time, even if you're not quite happy about it, and submit a regrade. It's obviously better to do it with a regrade because you don't use this late work penalty. If the late work penalty applies and you do a regrade, the late work stays. So let's say that it was late by 8 calendar days. If it was late by those 8 calendar days and you lost 20%, the best that you could do is an 80% on that particular assignment. So we really don't want to have late work at all. So from here, I'm going to start showing you a bunch of examples to kind of show you the kinds of things that we're doing. This is a digital fabrication building components example. These are some laser cut examples. There's another example of laser cut. These are all models that people have done in Rhino and are kind of professional models. From here, we'll go into some student work. These are renderings that students have done using Vray. This is part of their final projects. And so you can get a sense. This one, for example, had a bunch of Photoshop collage done to it, but I think it's a very effective end project. And so we'll spend a lot of time working on texture mapping and how the materials apply to buildings. Everybody wants to do the night rendering or the sunset rendering, so we'll make sure that you get that in where we do artificial lighting, and you can explore that. And another example with the artificial lighting. So I just want to give you a taste for the kinds of things that are coming. And all of these students started in the same place you did, with no skills or experience in Rhino and Vray, and these are the kinds of end results that they wound up with. All right, so from here, we're going to move on, and I'm going to do some live demo about our first day and our first exercise. So hold on for a second. We're going to switch over, and I'm going to show you that live demonstration of what you're going to do for exercise 201. Okay, so we've switched over to the demonstration part of today's lecture. And so we're going to do a little bit of Rhino today and actually get started in the world of Rhino and get you prepped and kind of the ball rolling. But before we do that, I want to talk through the course website because I think that's important, and that's how you're going to end up publishing your work at the end of class or at the end of lab today. Of course, if any of this seems complicated, don't worry about it. We can talk about it during the open lab hours, and I can help you through it without a problem. So you should have already gotten an email from me. It's actually an automated email from the digitaltoolsforarchitects.com website that will give you a temporary, or will give you an account with a temporary password. I'm going to start by showing you how to log in to the course website. So first off, you're going to navigate to digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. I have that open here in my web browser. And then this is the course website. We're going to start by logging in. I should also mention if you've taken 135 already, you'll use the same account that you had in 135. So there's no need to create a new account for 136. I'm going to go ahead and click on the login button. And you're going to take your credentials that were emailed to you, the temporary password and your email address. If you don't know your email address, it is probably your Insight email, whatever's listed there. That's the email that I used to create your account in the first place. And if you didn't get the email, the automated email, it's possible that it went to your spam folder, so check there. But you can also use the lost password link here, and it'll send you a new temporary password as well. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my temporary, this is my student account, so that what you guys will see on this lecture is the same as what actually happens on your computer. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in my password, and we'll go ahead and log in. Oops. I guess it helps if I actually type it correctly. And there we go. So this is the back end of the website. It's where you'll go to view your posts and see what you've been working on. What we're going to do first, though, is go all the way down into the section called Profile on the left side here in the black. And if I click on Profile, it's going to take me to information about myself, including the ability to upload a picture, which is always nice because it helps associate your work with you. And as I scroll down here, I can fill out information like first name, last name. I can control how my name is publicly displayed. It could be just first name or whatever. Email, if you want to change your email to a different email address, that's fine with me. The rest of these are all optional. You can put in information about yourself if you want. And then here's the key one down here under Account Management, New Password. If you want to change your password, you can actually generate a new password here. It by default gives you kind of a random string of characters, which is great for security purposes, but it also might not be something that you can remember. If you want to change the default password here, you could change it to, you know, I don't know, my dog or whatever you typically use as a password. If it's that weak, you're going to have to confirm the use of a weak password. Of course, I'd prefer that it be a much stronger password. That's going to keep everything nice and secure for us. And then when you're done, you can go ahead and click on your Update Profile button. I'm obviously not going to do that because I don't want to update my profile with my dog as my password. But I'm going to go ahead and go back afterwards and we'll view the website from the front. So what I did is I went up to that black bar in the upper corner and I went to the Digital Tools for Architects text here and then chose to view the site. So here we are on the course website. Let me walk you through some of the information that's contained on the course website. First off, here under the About tab, this is where we have information like the course syllabus, the course calendar, the calendar feeds, and how to subscribe to those. Also information about letters of recommendation, etc. So that's all available there. If you need to go back and get another copy of the syllabus besides the one that I emailed to you, it'll be there as well. Next up are the lectures. You guys are always going to be looking for the 136 lectures. So we can go to, here we are, Digital Tools for Architects 136. Here's fall of 2020. And when we click on that, we'll get a link to the first lecture. This is lecture 201, the one that you're currently listening to. And when you click on that, it will have information about Lecture 101. It'll have the recording of Lecture 101, links to previous lectures, and also links to download the PDFs of the slides of the lectures, etc. So that's available for you there. As we move over next is the tutorial section. This is where you'll find information about, say, Rhino, how to use certain things. So if we wanted to learn how to use Rotate 3D, for example, we could click on Rhino and then come down here to Rotate 3D, and this will walk us through in a step-by-step manner how to use the Rotate 3D command in Rhino. So you guys in this class will be primarily concerned with Rhino and also with Vray. Vray has some different information in it. So here I have Vray with version 3.6. That's what you guys will be using. Actually, you'll be using 4, but it's very similar to 3.6. And then I have old versions down below here because they changed it quite significantly. So anyway, that'll walk you through kind of how you're doing various Vray tasks going forward. So those are all available there under the tutorial section. The next tab here is exercises. This is where your exercises will be posted. So if we go to 136 and then fall of 2020, there we are. Here's exercise 201. That's the exercise that you're going to be working on in the lab session today. Exercise 201 here walks you through step by step the things that we're going to be doing. And this also has a link right here to the step-by-step instructions for what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and open that in the background in a new tab right there. And so we'll go through that in just a little bit once we connect to Rhino. As we come along here, we've got exercises, then we've got assignments. You currently don't have any assignments, so there's not even a fall of 2020 listed yet, but it will be. Next over is resources. This includes both the Rhino blocks library and some of the Vray setups and Vray materials. You'll be using all of those a little bit later on in the semester. So nothing you need to worry about right now, but they are available there under the resources tab. Over one more, we have the student work section. This is where you can actually go in and see student work. So right here under 136, we could go to exercises and we could go to exercise 201. And this would show us all of the previous posts for exercise 201. There they all are. And yours will show up here once you start posting them today as well. So that's the student work section. Next one over is that login tab that'll allow you to log in for the website going forward. So that's kind of an overview of the website. We'll come back and do a post at the end of the lecture today. But before that, we want to talk through how do we access Rhino and actually get started with Rhino and using the school computers, etc. So this part, I'm not sure if it's going to work for you just yet. If it doesn't work on the 24th, which would be today, then it will work in the next couple days. So it's coming. I've been assured by the IT department at DVC that this is being set up and will work for you. So I'm going to go through and run a scenario where you can actually show what it's like to connect to the school lab computers. So I'm going to open a new tab here. And in the browser, I'm going to type in https://idm.dvc.edu. You can see it's already filling out there for me because obviously I've been to this page before. And when I click on that, idm.dvc.edu, it brings us to our typical credentials page that's associated with DVC. So you're going to want to fill in your username and password. I use a password management solution here, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in my password right there. And then I'll go ahead and click on the login icon. And when it logs in, it's going to take me to this VMware portal. And in the VMware portal, you may or may not have anything showing in your favorites. You might have to jump over into the apps section. And when you jump over into the apps section, you can click on this tab for virtual, and you will see what computers you have access to. So in this case, I have access to the DVC engineering technology computers, and I've gone ahead and clicked the little star icon to be next to it. That star icon is going to favorite it so that it'll show up in my favorites tab right there. Now, if you want to access this, which I recommend, via the desktop client, you're going to need to install that desktop client before we actually click on this computer. To do that, we're going to click on our initials up here in the right corner, and then we'll go to Settings. And this will bring us to our settings. And we have two options here. We can open our virtual machine in the browser, or we can open it in the Horizon client. This is, again, what I'm going to recommend. For today's purposes, if you want, you could access it in the browser. That's fine. But I'll go ahead and access it via the client. I've already installed the client. If you haven't installed the client, you can click on this install link. And when you do that, it will take you to the VMware page where you can actually download the client either for Windows or for Mac. Or maybe you're working on Linux. I doubt that. But you can download the client and then it will work. And once you have that, you can set the Horizon client as your default way of launching the remote desktop. I'll go ahead and click on Update. It successfully updated my preference, and we'll go back to my favorites now. And I can go ahead and click on this engineering technology computer. Now when I click on this, it's going to go ahead and ask me, do we want to launch it? I do want to launch it. We need to allow it to open. There we go. I have a technology acceptable use policy. You guys have all clicked and seen these before if you've gone to school at DVC in the past. If not, you're more than welcome to read through it. It just says that you're not going to do bad things. I'll go ahead and click on Accept. And it's going to start preparing the remote desktop. So here it is. This looks a lot like the lab computer, as it should. And I'll once again click OK for the acceptable use policy. And it will go ahead and it will log me into one of the Engineering Technology Computer Lab computers. So this process can take a little bit of time to actually do the login. And so you just kind of have to be patient while it creates this connection to it. For some of you, it's possible that it will show up as a full screen window, and I believe that there's a keyboard shortcut to get you out of the full screen window. On the Mac, I was able to just show all of my windows and then click on it to get it out of the full screen window. I don't know, I'll work through the tutorial for how to get it out of its full screen mode for you guys a little bit later on. But again, this is a relatively new piece of technology, so I'm not used to how this setup really works. So we'll spend a little bit more time letting this log in. Like I said, it's a little bit slow to get this to connect, but it will connect eventually. So we'll be patient and wait, and then I'll continue. Actually, I'll pause the recording for a little bit, and then we'll come back once it's logged in. All right, so we've gone ahead and it's finished logging in, which is great. This is giving me access to the school machine. This looks very much like the school machine and how it works. I have access to everything from the start menu, all the programs that are available, whether we're in 135 and you're working through InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, etc. Those are all there. If you're in 136, you're going to be using Rhino and Vray. And so all of the software is available to you right there, which is great. So now that we've gone ahead and we've logged in for 136, we're going to continue on, and I'm going to have you go ahead and launch Rhino. So right here on the desktop, we have Rhino 6 available to us. I'm going to double click on Rhino 6. And that's going to allow Rhino to get started here. And we're going to let it open up for its first time. It's updating the toolbars and help files and whatever. Perfect. And so right here we have a whole bunch of templates that we can use from. Looks like we have an error there. Just go ahead and say OK for right now. And it's gone ahead and it's opened up a file already for us. There we go. If we went to File and then New, we could actually pick from templates. That's what I was about to start telling you about. We're going to work primarily in this course in the Large Object Inches template, which is right there. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Large Object Inches template right now, and I can say Open, and this gives us our Rhino workspace. The other thing that I will point out, this is not required as part of this class, but I think it might actually be beneficial. If I go back to our Exercise 201 tab, this is what I had open before, you'll see that there's actually a download here for the Exercise 201 3DM file. This is a sample file that I've already prepped for you with some environment. It'll make the renderings look a little bit better. So I would encourage you to go ahead and download that. You'll right-click on it and say Download Linked File. And it's going to download into your Downloads folder right there. And now if you've accessed the Rhino and or the virtual machine through the desktop client, you can actually browse for that file that we just downloaded. So I can go to File and I can go to Open. We don't need to save changes to this right now. And I can actually find my Downloads folder. There it is. Oh, sorry, that's my PC Downloads folder. I have to go to my, I'm working on my MacBook here. I have to go into my MacBook, and then I can look at my downloads folder. And there it is. I can look at the date modified, and there's the file that I just downloaded. So now that that's been downloaded, I can actually open up that file. And this is an advantage to working natively in the client. So rather than using the web browser, I can actually natively open up this file directly. So we'll give it just a second to open up here. And that's just telling you that the Vray data is going to be automatically upgraded because the new version of Vray. And there we go. So in this particular scene, I already have some stuff set up for you. I have some environment. All of that environment is on a locked layer, so we're not going to accidentally move it or work with it. So first thing I like to do whenever we start working through a piece of software is I like to talk through what's going on, what's the interface, what are we seeing in Rhino here. So right here across the top, we have our typical menu structure. And most commands available in Rhino are available in three ways. One way would be through the menu structure. The second way would be to type in the command. And the third way would be to pick a button for that particular command. So pretty much everything that we're working on here, we can go ahead and we can initiate the command straight from the menu structure. Below that menu structure, we have what is called the command line. And the command line is really an interface that allows us to really quickly model our things in Rhino. And so whenever we're trying to create something, if you learn to use the command line, your efficiency will go way up and you'll actually be able to model faster and quicker with a lot less hassle. So anyway, that's something that you can actually type in. So a lot of times I'll refer to type commands, or I'll tell you to type something into the command line. So for example, I could type in line and it will initiate the line command, etc. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Below that, we have our standard menu bars. By default, the render tools are up. We're going to switch back to the standard tools. So I've clicked the tab for standard. These are all tabs that are available to us. We're going to use standard. And then within the standard tabs, we have some of our basic settings here. But we also have a variety of quickly used tools running down the left side here, a lot of which we will use on a very frequent basis. At the very bottom of the page, we have several different views. This switches between the views. We'll talk about the views in just a second. But we also have something called Object Snap that is available. These are, if we check the boxes, this will allow us to snap to certain points. So endpoint, midpoint, and perpendicular would be the ones that I would have checked by default. So I'm going ahead and checking end, mid, and perpendicular. We also want to confirm that we're working in inches. So right there it shows us that we're working in inches. That's perfect. On the far right side here, we have our basic information about whatever it is that we're working on. If we had an object selected, we'd have information about that object. Right now, it's just information about the viewport and the lens length that we're looking at the viewport in, etc. We have different tabs available across here, including the Layers tab, which we'll get to, including a Materials tab, etc. And finally, in the very middle of the screen, which I've kind of worked my way around, and now we're coming back to the middle of the screen here, I have three primary views and a perspective view. So I have a top, front, and right side view. That's our standard orthographic projections. And then I have the perspective view. You're going to be working in a variety of these views as you go forward. Today, we'll primarily work in the perspective view. The nice thing is that we can make that perspective view take up the full page rather easily by just clicking on where it says perspective. We're going to double click, and when I do that, it makes perspective view take up the whole page. If I want to go back to all the rest of my views, I can double click and it'll show me the rest of my views. So it's really easy to navigate between the views and make them large or small by just double clicking on them. So go ahead and double click on the perspective view for our purposes today, and that will make the perspective view nice and large. The next thing that I'm going to ask you to do is I'll ask you to go ahead and change the current renderer. By default, it's set for the Rhino render. We want to change it to Vray before we perform any renderings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the render menu icon. I'll come down to current renderer, and I'm going to change from Rhino render to Vray for Rhino. So we'll go ahead and click on that and change that. And now that's been changed as well. So everything's set up for us to actually start working in Rhino. And so it's time to actually do some Rhino work. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back to our exercise for today. We've downloaded this, and the next step is to follow Rhino 5.2 Simple Shapes to create the shape that we're showing below. So I already have this shape available, I believe. So let me go ahead and click on the Simple Shapes. And there we go. And this is going to walk us through step by step for how to do it. We can move past the first two steps, and we're going to start right here under step 3 using the rectangle corner to corner tool, which is right there, to draw a 5-foot by 5-foot rectangle. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that process. Now the nice thing about this being a recorded lecture is that you can pause after these steps, and once it's paused you can do this and then come back and unpause and keep going as part of your lab exercise. So we're going to use the rectangle corner to corner tool. It's available in our standard tools. Right down here, it's the 4th one down on the right side of this, rectangle corner to corner. Alternatively, we could actually type in the command line rectangle. There it is. So either way we could do that, or we could pick the rectangle corner to corner button. We'll get to the same place. Now I want to start my drawing right here where the origin is, and I'll do that by typing in the coordinate of that origin, which would be 0, 0. Now it's assumed that it would be flat on the ground, but I can add the vertical as well. So 0, 0, 0 would give me x, y, and z values. We'll talk about this a little bit more next class and what that really means. But when I hit enter on the keyboard, it then starts my my shape right at where those axes meet. And then I can type in 5 feet, which would be 5 apostrophe, comma 5 apostrophe, and hit enter. And that will draw my shape that is exactly at 5 feet. Now, if you don't start right at the origin, if you start over here in space, it's slightly different. I just clicked at a random spot, but instead of typing 5 feet, comma 5 feet like that, I'm actually going to put the email @ sign in front of it and type 5 feet, comma 5 feet. Now, if this stresses you out, don't worry. It's going to be something we'll cover in depth the next class in lecture 202. So all of this coordinates and whatever I'll explain in much better details going forward. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and that then creates that rectangle as well. So here's my first rectangle. That's really the one that I'm going to be working on. I can, by the way, zoom in and zoom out using the scroll wheel on a mouse. If you're working on a laptop at home, I would highly recommend that you get a mouse to work with. It's much easier to work on using a mouse than to use a trackpad. So I'm going to go ahead and use my mouse here, and we're going to continue working. I'm going to flip back and forth to my tutorials here so that I perform this in the same order. There are steps that we could very easily adjust, but while I move forward, I'll keep selecting what the next step is so that we can see. We're going to use the patch tool. And in this scenario, I've said to go up to the surface menu and then to patch. Now, I have my object already selected here. So I've clicked on the object, it's highlighted in yellow, and then I'll go up to surface and then patch. And when I do that, it gives me some patch surface options right here. I'm going to change my patch surface to be 2 by 2 instead of 10 by 10. I really don't need a surface that's as complex as 10 by 10, so we'll go 2 by 2 in the surface U spans and the surface V spans. And we'll go ahead and say OK. And what that does is it actually creates a surface on my plane here at the bottom, rather than just a set of lines. Now, some of you, if you didn't start with the template file, or if you didn't start with the file that I let you download, you may be seeing this in wireframe mode, which would look more like this. If you're seeing it in wireframe mode, make sure you come up to where it says perspective, click the little down-facing arrow, and then change to shaded mode, like that, so you're seeing it with the shading applied. I'm going to zoom out just slightly as we go forward. So once again, that was select the rectangle, and then go to surface and then patch. And that then gives us the surface itself right there. Now you'll notice in Rhino that one of the great features that it has is when you try to click on an object, if there are two objects on top of each other where you click, it will actually present a little selection menu and let you cycle between those objects to pick which one it is that you wanted to pick. So we could pick just the curve, or we could pick the surface, either one. So there it is as the surface, for example. So let me flip back here for a second and we'll move on to the next step. We're going to use that rectangular plane corner to corner, the same one that we used in step 3, but we're going to change it to be a vertical surface, or a vertical plane, rather than a corner to corner. And I misspoke. This is going to be a rectangular plane, not a rectangle. So it works similarly, but we're going to create the surface when we create it rather than the outline of the shape. So let me jump back over into Rhino here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into our rectangular plane. So right here is our surface from 3 or 4 corner points. There are more tools hidden underneath this. You see that little triangle facing down here? If I click on that, look at all these tools that are available. And we're going to pick this one, which is called a vertical plane. Alternatively, I could pick the rectangle plane corner to corner and then look in my command line here and choose that I want it to be vertical. And I can click on vertical, or I could actually type V for vertical. It's the capital letter, that's what you would type. And I'll pick the start edge, so I'm going to pick right here. Now, if yours isn't snapping to that corner, make sure you have endpoint checked down here at the bottom. And so we'll snap right to that corner there. We'll come up to this corner here, and you can see that it says end. That way I know I'm snapped on it. And there is my vertical plane. This is going to be 5 feet, so I'll go ahead and type 5 followed by apostrophe and hit enter or return on the keyboard. Now, instead of having the shape appear right away, it's going to ask me to choose rectangle. Essentially, that's the direction. Do I want the rectangle facing down, or do I want it facing up? And I have to click on the side that I want it facing. So in this case, I want it facing up, so I'll put my mouse on the up side and do a left click right there, a standard click to create that plane. I'm going to orbit around this by holding down the right mouse button, so I'll right click and hold, and that will allow me to orbit to see my drawing or my model a little bit better. So this is something, if you're used to SketchUp, it might mess you up initially. In SketchUp, you hold down the middle mouse button to do your orbits. In Rhino, you right click to orbit, and there it is. So we're going to jump back over here to my next step. That was my vertical plane. We're going to repeat that same step to create another adjacent side. So let me come back here to my Rhino model. I'm going to come down to my surface. I'm going to click the little triangle, and once again I'll pick corner to corner, or I could just jump right ahead to vertical plane. If you pick corner to corner, we have to pick vertical or type V for vertical. There it is. Start of edge will go right here. End of edge will be right there, and we'll come up vertical right to there, and that creates my next plane. So this is where it would be really noticeable if you weren't in the surface shaded mode. If you were in wireframe, it would still look transparent. So make sure that you are in fact in shaded mode. By the way, stay away from rendered mode for right now. It's not going to help us too much. We'll get back to rendered mode a little bit later. So let's stay in shaded mode. And let's go back and look at those directions again. So there we are. We're going to use a polyline to create a diagonal line across the top of the cube. So what does that mean? That means come over here and pick the polyline tool right here, or you could actually type in the command line polyline, either way, and we'll go from this corner across to that corner right there. Now when I'm done, a polyline means I can keep going, but in this case I'm done, so I'll hit enter, and that will finish the line. So you can see if I use the polyline tool and I kept drawing, it would just keep a continuous line going until I hit enter. I obviously don't need that, so I'll select it and press the delete key on the keyboard. So there's that diagonal line that I asked you to create. We'll jump back and look at the directions yet again. And here we are. We're going to use the surface from 3 or 4 corner points now to create a surface on that top triangle. So let's go back to Rhino. and we'll use our surface from 3 or 4 corner points. Right there, we've clicked on that one before, but instead of clicking the little arrow, we'll actually use the command itself. Surface from 3 or 4 corner points, and we'll pick 1, 2, and 3. Now we're not going to pick a 4th point. We only have 3 points. So when we're done, we'll press enter, and that will create our surface. It doesn't matter in what order you pick the 3 points. Any order is just fine. So there's that surface. So far we've created the 2 back sides there and there, and we've created a surface right across the top, right there. Next piece, step 9 here, we're going to use something called derivative geometry. And this is something, I know it's a bit early to start talking about this, but it's also something that's really important for you guys to be aware of and to understand going forward. And so I like to do it and talk about it really early in the class, and we'll emphasize it as we go forward. And what I mean by derivative geometry is that in Rhino, whenever you have a shape of some kind, you can use that shape to derive other shapes. So we currently have this shape down here at the bottom. We can use this shape to create a line right along the edge right there. Now, could you just use the polyline tool and draw a line there to there? Sure. That would create the same line that we're about to create. The difference, though, is that if this wasn't a flat, straight surface, if it was an undulating, curving surface, if we wanted a line along the edge, the derivative geometry would be far better method. So what we'll do is we'll go up to Curve. We'll go to Curve from Objects, and we're going to duplicate an edge. So Curve from Objects, Duplicate Edge. And I'm going to pick that edge of the curve, and it highlights in yellow there. Now once I have that edge highlighted, I'll go ahead and press enter on the keyboard, and that then creates a brand new curve for me. So we'll move on to the next step right here. We're going to keep this newly created curve selected, and we're going to select the diagonal curve that we drew in step 6, and then we'll type loft or go to surface and then loft. So I'll come back here. This curve is already selected. I'm going to hold down Shift on the keyboard and select that curve right there. Now remember, it's a selection menu, so I can pick either the surface or the curve. I want the curve. There it is. I have one curve. I have a second curve. And then I'm going to go to Surface and then Loft, or I'll type Loft into the command line. There it is, and I'll press Enter. Now what this does is it creates a surface between those 2 lines. This is that curving surface that we were looking at earlier. So it's created that curving surface. The default options here are fine. I'll go ahead and say OK. And there it is. It's created that surface for us. Now it's time to finish off this surface with one more triangle. I can do that with the surface from 3 or 4 corner points. That's what I'm asking you to do here in step 11. And I'll choose the surface from 3 or 4 corner points right there. And I'll go 1, 2, and 3. Remember, I could pick a 4th. I'm not going to pick a 4th. I'm going to hit Enter instead. And that then creates that surface right there. So now I have a completely contained surface. That's exactly what I want. It's time to make an output and post that output to the course website. Now I already have an environment set up so we can actually do an initial rendering in Vray. Worst case is I could just click on the render button, which is this blue sphere right here. And if I click on the render button, I will get a little rendering that shows my object there. It actually looks a bit on the dark side. Let me go ahead and close that right there. I'd like to make it a little bit more exciting, and to do that I'm going to select all of my shape. Now there's 2 different selections. You can select right to left and it will select anything that is touching the object. If you select left to right, it will select just what is contained by that rectangle. So there I've selected just that object itself. I'm going to open up the Vray menu, which is right here. It's called the Vray Asset Editor. It's like a sphere with a V on it. And that brings up this Vray Asset Editor. I have materials preloaded. I have gold, I have red plastic, I have an orange porcelain, I have shiny blue, and I have a titanium. You can apply any one of these by right-clicking on this material. There we go. And say Apply to Selection. And when I do that, gold has then been applied to this object. Now you don't see it because it's not in rendered mode. I would have to switch to rendered mode, and even that, sometimes you don't see a good preview. It doesn't look like it's doing a good job previewing. So we'll actually go back to shaded mode and try a real rendering. Let me go ahead and click on render, and let's see if we can see it in gold. There it is. It's still not turning out too well. Let me see if I can reset the settings here. Let me go back to my render settings, and let's click on this little reset. We'll go back to our default render settings. And let's try to render again and see if that looks a little bit better. There we go. There must have been something that went wrong during the translation. So I'm going to go ahead and close that render again. Just to reiterate, I could change the material by selecting the object. There it is selected. I can go back to the materials, and I could change, say, to the, let's do shiny blue. I'll right click and say apply to selection. And the renderings are what you see is what you get, so let's make sure I can see the whole object, and then I can go ahead and render again. And there it is as the shiny blue object. When this rendering is done, it's finishing up its render pass here. There we go. I can go ahead and I can save this render. So I'm going to click on the save icon. It's the little disk icon. And then I want to make sure it goes to my folder. So today I can put it back in my downloads folder. That's where I opened it. This will be exercise 201. There we go. And I'll go ahead and click on save. Now I would encourage you to practice multiple times. So I just drew this once, but you could draw it several times so you get used to the commands, etc. But as I said, I would finish up by showing you how to post this on the course website. So I'm going to go back to my browser here. I'm going to go back to my student account. And in my student account, I'm going to click at the black bar at the top of the page here. I'm going to go to New Post. So I go to New Post on the course website. Of course, I have to be logged in for this. And I'm going to go ahead and label this Exercise 201. There it is. And I actually don't need to type anything in here. I do need, however, to load a featured image for this particular post. So I'm going to go in and scroll all the way to the very bottom on the right side. And right here under Featured Image, I can click on the link for Featured Image. And when I click on the link for featured image, this is showing the images that I previously uploaded. You're going to upload a new image. So go ahead and click on the Upload Files little tab here. And with the Upload Files tab selected, go ahead and click on the blue button in the middle that says Select Files. Alternatively, you could just drag it into that box. I've gone ahead and done that. Now, here is, let's see, where's my rendering from today? There it is, right there. And I'll go ahead and click on Open. And that will upload my image. There it is. And we'll go ahead and click on the Set Featured Image button. It's that blue button in the bottom right corner. And that will set that blue image, that rendering as my current image. Perfect. One more thing to do over here in the Categories section. I need to scroll down. We're going to be in the Digital Tools for Architects class. There it is, 136. It's not an assignment, it is an exercise. So we keep scrolling until we get to exercises, and this is actually exercise 201. And it's important that you at least check the exercise 201 box, because that's how the website will categorize it, and it'll show up under all the exercise 201 student work. So once that's done, I can scroll back up and I can click the blue Publish button, which is right here. That Publish button is effectively like turning in your work. So when I click on that Publish button, it's going to turn in my exercise 201 right there. Now it's been posted, which is great. You'll see a post published icon here. And with that post publish, I can also go on the left side here and I can see all my posts. As you start to create more and more posts, they will show up here. You can see exercise 201. If I want to go back in and edit it, I can click on the edit link and go back in, etc. Now if I go to the website itself, so upper left corner, visit site, you can see here that there is that post that I just created. Furthermore, if I went to student work and I went to exercises and I chose exercise 201, there's that post that I just created. So that's what I'm asking you to do as your exercise 201 today. It's a little bit of Rhino and a little bit of a post. Like I said, if for some reason the virtual machine is not working for you or this isn't showing up, we'll solve those problems. So don't feel like you're going to get too far behind. Again, this is all due on Sunday by midnight. So we should be able to get those kinks worked out before that time happens. But again, there's always kinks in the remote learning, so I'll be understanding and we'll work through it. And so with that being it, we're now done with our lecture 201. I look forward to seeing you guys in the lab session this week.